Good morning, everyone. I thought it's only very early for people to attend in my country, Egypt, where I'm coming from, but it seems that Azerbaijan as well. But we are so happy to have with us today an amazing panelist and a group of people. I'm sure people, when the conversation gets more and more hot, they will join the conversation. So today we're talking about a very interesting subject, which is partnering with private sector and how private sector and foundations can ensure that they have and contribute to climate resilience for human mobility and affected communities. Let me introduce our, I don't want to say guests, but panelists, friends, and colleagues from different organizations, starting by Dr. Brian, Vice President of Strategy and Impact Investment at BMW Foundation, Ms. Kristal, Managing Director for Official Institution Coverage at BNP Paribas, and IOM Youth Champion and Youth Delegate, Bill Guidi, Social Entrepreneurship and IOM Youth Delegation. I would like to thank you all for being with us today, and I would like to start the conversation. It will be really good to know from private sector, from foundation, and from the youth their opinion and their contribution to climate resilience and human mobility. And when we talk about human mobility affected by climate change, I think that everyone is vulnerable because it's not one country over another. I think when it comes to climate change, vulnerability goes across the board. But of course, some population are more affected since they are not only struggling with climate change, but also with other crises, intensified crises, whether economic crisis, protracted crisis, or others. So I would like to start my question to Dr. Brian. And I would like to know from BMW Foundation, who has been working to support with innovation and communities. And I want to start first question to you, asking about how your organization, what is the strategies of BMW Foundation to mobilize financial and technical resources for climate adaptation?
Good morning, everybody. Hope it's not too early for you. So my name is Brian. Thank you very much for the kind invitation, introduction. I'm working for the BMW Foundation, and those of you who have not heard of the BMW Foundation, I give a very short introduction what we do, so it will help you understand how we tackle these questions and how some of you might potentially be able to interact or work with the foundation, because that's usually also what people are interested. So it's a joint foundation by the BMW Group, which is the car manufacturer and the owner family of BMW. And it's a corporate foundation mostly focusing on Europe, because that's where our network is the strongest. But then we have a global network of 3,500 leaders where we try to get a global reach, and we focus specifically now on 4 regions, which is Brazil, Southern Africa, India, and the transatlantic relationship. It's a little bit arbitrary that we use that. I think it's stemming from the fact that we had to focus in some way our efforts, because we are not as big as some other international foundations. I think when we think about what our role can be, we identified that as a corporate foundation, our lever is probably not the capital that we provide. Capital is usually a strong lever for a foundation, but we see that also other foundations, American foundations like the Rockefeller Foundation, they reinvent themselves, and they're trying to become more than just a capital provider. Foundations try to find out where they are in this system and how can they leverage their unique role. And I think for a foundation like ours, it's probably to use the whole foundation toolkit at the intersection of business, policy, society, community, and to kind of bridge the gap a way that other institutions cannot do it. So what we did and how we also repositioned ourselves is that we are going for a private-public philanthropy partnership approach. So we are specifically looking for solutions and questions where all these 4 parties are necessary, and where foundations can bring a unique solution to the question that other people can't, that other capital provider can't, that a corporate can't. So what is that usually? We think that foundations, next to the capital and to the risk-taking that foundations can do, that they can usually communicate in a different way than public organizations could do, that they can provide a platform and room for exchange and negotiations that others can't, that they can catalyze certain movements, and that they can provide early support, and that this is something, and that they can open doors. Foundations can open you doors to actors in ways that corporations and that public institutions can't. And that is how we look at the challenges that we are trying to solve. We're trying to explicitly identify where a foundation can add value on top of financial support, and then we convene the actors. We are creating challenges and solutions, and then we drive the process until the end. That's how we work with a team of roughly 100 people now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brian, and this was very well said and explained. So actually taking us from strategies to climate finance, let me go to Ms. Cristal. And I would like to ask you, BNP Paribas has been a great contributor to lots of programs to climate resilience. How do you mobilize finance? How do you support resilience of the communities affected by climate crisis?
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. So just to introduce the role of a bank in this environment, in this sector, because it can be surprising to see a private actor working on resilience and more largely on climate finance. The thing is that within BNP Paribas, the ESG strategy is becoming a kind of part of our DNA. Why? Because, like I would say something that you usually hear, there is no planet B. So for us, as a bank, our mandate is to accelerate the economic development. And what we see is that with climate change, you have more and more intense extreme weather events, which are disrupting some economies, industries, and also communities and populations. So for us, this climate change and the physical risk associated is becoming a real financial risk. So that creates some revenue swings for some industries such as agribusiness, all the outdoors activities, to be honest, and a world that is not answerable anymore. We see also that countries and sectors are not exposed the same way. Outdoors economies are much more affected by climate hazards. So how do we reach all these people? So our main clients, because we have clients, are individuals and corporates. Our objective is first to give them access to information. So we are supporting data modeling platforms in order for this population, so people and also corporates, to be able to access to this data and start making long-term decisions. So we saw, for example, lastly in Spain, that one of the most issue that the people recognize was the lack of information, and we think that it's really key to give access to that to people. The second layer is really to invest in adaptation. So resilience is first saving lives, because if you are able to bring to people the right tools to adapt, it will just save lives. But it also means for us to support this economic stability and protect the environment. So the adaptation will help to avoid to lose billions in repairing and rebuilding. And this is really the way we support the resilience, to find solutions first by informing people, but also to invest in adaptation solutions for the future.
Please.
Can I add briefly to that? I think when you hear the negotiations currently taking part, one thing you realize is that the capital for climate adaptation and mitigation, especially in the global south, is still lacking. And one thing that we as a foundation noticed is that our role can be, on the one side, to be catalytic in a way that we can change the incentive of institutional investors in a way that some of these projects become investable, but that it's not only a market problem, but that's also a mindset issue for many institutional investors, that they are not ready, or that they're not, from their upbringing, especially when I look at Western European investors, that they are not willing to take those risks because some of these projects are completely new to them. So there is definitely a market component, but there's also a mindset component.
Exactly.
And that's why we partner with some international organizations and also the German Development Bank on programs that are especially targeting institutional investors, and work with them to get them to know some of these new ways of financing, so that they take it into their option space. I just want to say that some of these solutions are hard to finance, but it's also the way, what do you know already, what have you been brought up with, and if you have never seen that kind of projects, it's going to be hard for you to stand up and finance them. So I think the mindset shift is definitely something that is extremely important, and nobody will finance that. Nobody is going to finance you a investor education program for pension funds or institutional finance organizations. So I think it's very important.
Thank you so much. Thank you from Cristal and from Dr. Brian. I think this was amazing points. And I really like very much the idea of the mindset and the culture change and the understanding that the crisis is bigger than us. And also understanding that the global stock take that came last year when they were revising the Paris Agreement was clear that we need to take risks, and we need to bring academia, science, private sector, youth entrepreneur, etc., to come to the table and to work with all of us to start new projects and new ideas. And unless the private sector, foundations, bank, donors have this kind of believing and taking the risk with us, really we cannot create an impact for the affected communities. But saying that, let's hear from a youth entrepreneur, social entrepreneurship, who come with the innovative ideas, who also embedded in the communities, to tell us some of his, first of all, insight of what he heard from foundation and from private sector, from our panelists, but also give us a little bit of how can you contribute as a young entrepreneurship, seeing and firsthand the affected communities by climate migration. How can innovation through young people can contribute to the solutions?
So, nice meeting you. My name is Bilgudan. I'm from Mongolia, and it's very nice sitting with you, distinguished people. And so I'm an entrepreneur from Mongolia, and I actually grew up as a herder myself. I grew up riding horses, herding sheep in the Mongolian land. But that was until like 2009, when one of the harshest, we Mongolians call it zot, which is like a very harsh winter condition where millions of livestock die. And in 2009, our whole family lost like around 1,000 livestock, and we had to move to the city because we didn't have our livelihood anymore. And we had a nomadic lifestyle for generations, but because of climate change, we had to move to the city and live our lifestyle. So when I went to the city, I got an education, and I went into entrepreneurship when I graduated from college, and I founded my first startup. And then last year, actually, it was actually one of the also worst zots happened in Mongolia, and 8 million livestock died in Mongolia. And seeing that, I wanted to do something, and because I knew the problems personally, and I went through the problems myself, I understood the problem, and I know that the herders themselves can't access technology, and they don't understand innovation very much. So I wanted to do something, and I founded Oturchung. Oturchung is a mobile-based solution that and is a technological solution that utilize satellite images and satellite GPS tracking to give early warning to Mongolian herders to better prepare them for these natural disasters. So it's still very early stage, but we've been chosen as a finalist for the World Bank pitch competition out of over 2,000 applicants, and also we recently got an investment from a private firm in Mongolia, and we're about to launch in a couple of months. So that's the progress that we've made so far, and I see that the role as with us as young people is because we are very passionate about the problems and we have the capacity to come up with innovative solutions and really solve the problem that's been there like for generations. The Mongolian herders used to um, rely on their senses to protect themselves, protect their livestock. But with the technology that is already out there, we could use that and like use that to better help the Mongolian herder community. So I think that's very important for us, and to also speak about these problems. Like uh, I think like most of you haven't heard about the Mongolian herders and like what's happening in Mongolia, but like in like a couple of months, it's the winter is getting near, so these problems happen every year, and it's getting more and more common. Like jolts used to happen once in a decade, but it's been happening almost every year recently. So I wanted to do something about that, and I started.
Thank you so much. And by the way, every time one of the young people speaking, I feel there is hope. Because in every country and every region, there is always these young minds who come with amazing, innovative ideas, and they really contribute highly to their communities, but also their model can be replicated in different other communities. So thank you so much for that. And talking about innovation and young people, maybe Brian can tell us a little bit how BMW Foundation use innovation in their own programs to support the communities. How can you contribute to young people and young entrepreneurship to support, but also how can we be part of this program to support the affected communities?
So first of all, I wanted to say it's a very inspiring and inspirational story that you shared. I can just hardly imagine how tough it must be and what kind of effort you will have to take to come up with that solution. So congratulations to that leap of faith. The foundation also has an entrepreneurship program that is selecting roughly 30 to 40 startups yearly on a global basis. And again, I think the role of a foundation can be on the one side to financially support them. We have an impact investing fund that is investing in these kind of solutions. However, I think for us even a more impactful approach is probably to showcase some of these solutions, to bring those solutions to decision makers that would otherwise never see and hear of that solutions. It's, I think, more a systemic approach again that is speaking to the minds of people, that gives entrepreneurs like you are a platform, an access that you would probably not get otherwise. What is the foundation doing? So again, we have these entrepreneurship accelerators. We are working with ecosystems for investors. We bring them to global stages, like here, like Davos, like New York. We work with policymakers to create a more enabling environment for innovators to flourish. We're working on new financial mechanisms, these private-public philanthropic partnerships, together with governmental institutions, with private banks, to move more capital to these solutions that are currently hard to fund. And we do directly capability building. We work with the entrepreneurs, we help them scale, we provide technical assistance, and we match them directly to certain buyers. Sometimes this is something more for a later stage innovators, but for some of the climate innovations that we have in our portfolio, for example, we have an initiative together with Breakthrough Energy and the University of Munich that is scaling energy technologies. So a challenge for them very often is there is a very innovative technology or a product, but there is no demand because the product is either too expensive or not market ready yet. And the fact that there is no demand leads to the fact that they don't get any money because they can't get any bank loans because the bank is asking, show me your first contract. And the company is saying, well, show me your first plant. And then, or like fabric, it's like industrial plant. So that's a kind of a vicious circle that we are trying to break on the one side through financing, on the other side to create or to bring these innovators closer to potential buyers so that they can actually create their product.
Thank you so much. I think that this you opened for us a lot of ways to think differently as maybe UN agencies, but also think differently how we look to foundations and how we can work with foundations, because at the end of the day we are in all this, we are in this all of us together. So it is the time for us to come together and find different ways of doing things. And again, how we think and how foundations like yours think is very important to bring this thinking together, to be able to come to one way of doing things, because I think that up till now still everyone is working on their own way and we need to bring it closer.
Maybe let me add one thing to this. Usually how we work is we create a theory of change and a system map. And part of this system mapping, when we have a challenge like scaling climate adaptation innovations, usually what comes out of these mappings is that every actor has a specific role to play in the system. And we are trying to identify and work with these actors what their role can be. Usually the private sector is relatively constrained in what they're doing, but they are the ones who can scale solutions and who could provide the capital. Foundations on the other side can be more risky. They can take the risk, they can be more neutral. But we also, for example, work with wealth holders who are even more on the risk spectrum because they can act very fast and they can provide capital very easily for something that they are passionate about. And then we are trying to create these multi-stakeholder alliances where every party can provide the part that they can do best. But orchestrating that is not so easy. And there's some initiative, one we have together with the World Economic Forum, that is actually looking exactly into how can these orchestrations look like.
Thank you so much. I think that this is the mapping idea is great. Everyone has a role is really also another thing that's very, very important. But you talked about fast processing. Yes, this is a word that we all want to hear and we want to use, because every time we talk in all these forums about processes, policies, procedures, potential programs, but still the fast part to help people in Mongolia and in other countries is extremely important. Saying that, maybe Crystal can tell us, after hearing from Dr. Brian and after hearing from the entrepreneurship and from people who are affected by climate crisis, how do you see the private sector and the banking sector are contributing to the migrants affected by climate crisis? And how do you see innovation as a tool here to support fast and access to funding to support the resilience?
So first point, I think that we need to be really humble. So thank you very much for your testimony, because for someone like me, it's a really like back to reality, a really reality check on the way climate change is affecting our world community. And as you were saying, Dr. Brian, I think that each stakeholder has his role to play. So you are on the ground, you really face the consequences of the climate change. You have the idea, you are an entrepreneur, and you start to build solution, but you need funding and support. So this is where the foundation come to the place. So I really like the idea of change of mindset that you described, Dr. Brian, in the sense that it's true that we as banks we are regulated. So we have the risk for us is a real cost that sometimes we cannot afford. So for us, the main driver of this innovation is really the possibility to de-risk the operation that we do. So the idea of this panel, for example, is a real illustration of the way we want to work at BNP Paribas. So to create this kind of organization or network between the local, the entrepreneur on the ground, philanthropies, but also public sector, multinational banks, also actors such as the UN, who can de-risk the innovation that we take, the innovation solution in terms of financing this large project. Because our role is really to scale up the financing of the project that you just described. So how do we scale up? So I was talking about de-risking. So for example, we have a solution that is called outcome bond. Sorry, I will enter in the kind of technicality, but hope it will be clear for you. So our objective is really to channel the private sector money into this kind of project. So how do we do that? Because today public money is more and more scarce. There is less and less public money. Many countries have really large developed debts at a moment where we are really facing real challenges in terms of adapting our economical models, the way we finance our energy, the energy we use. So the challenges are really huge, and many countries in the world have a lot of debt. So public money is really scarce. Where there is money, it's on the private sector side. So investors, asset managers, these kind of people who are not really willing to take risk. And as you were saying, maybe it's also a mindset that they have to change. But for the time being, we are not there. So what we do is to de-risk the solution that we can provide in order to scale up the kind of innovation that you do. So for example, this outcome bond solution is that we issue a bond. So that means that we accompany a sovereign issuer or a public sector issuer, which is really which has a really good rating. And we take a guarantee from like an agency from the UN or the first investment of a philanthropy like you to finance a project where we can find some side advantages. So it can be a carbon offsetting, for example. So that when, for example, you invest in forestry, that help to reduce the carbon emissions that the project will provide. So this is the kind of adaptation solution that we can suggest. Because the objective at the end is really to build a new resilient way to accelerate the economic development, but also to help for the mitigation, the mitigation and the adaptation in the future. So really, we want to be really humble on what we can do. So we are not as close as you to the reality of the events. We don't have your experience in terms of taking risk, but what we can do is to scale up your both expertise in order to bring the money to you and to make your ideas bigger and better.
Thank you so much, Crystal. Really, you have summarized, I think, a lot of the discussion, but also the idea that the bank is bringing the different actors together, and you are kind of the coordinator and the connector to convene.
We try, but
so this is a very good to learn and to understand. So thank you so much for that. And I think now I would like to go back to Bill Guidi and ask him the question. You heard a very comprehensive from foundation and from bank. How can they help you? But not only you, how can private sector, foundations, bank, and us as UN agencies support social entrepreneurship, support affected communities by displacement and migration due to climate crisis? How can we support youth entrepreneurship? So it would be good to hear from you, your view, your voice, and speak on behalf of you and also the millions of young people like you.
So, like you guys said, I think the biggest problem that I face right now and faced for the past like 4 years of my entrepreneurship is actually funding. Um, I've I've met a lot of different stakeholders. Like I've met governments, non-governmental organizations, and private sectors. And the only place that I got funding from was actually the private sector. And I when I formed I had a dilemma of like, do I open an NGO or a a company? I faced that about a year ago when I founded Dr. Chung. The reason was because the funding was very scarce for the private companies, because I've went to a lot of investors and talked to them, but most of the time the conditions were not very favorable for the private sectors and young entrepreneurs like me. Like they ask for example, if I go to a bank, they ask me for like collaterals and like history when I only have an MVP or I don't have much traction. But and also I got an investment offer from a private firm, but it was a convertible note. But it was too risky on my side. Like so. Also, when I talked to the EU for grant, like if I got the grant, all of my copyright would be sent to EU. And also, if I when I talked to KOICA, like the Korean grants, they said if I make profit, uh, it would not be a grant. It would be like a loan. I would have to give all the money back to the the grant givers. Like this, there are a lot of challenges on the conditions, and even though the social enterprise and NGO have the same goal, like I think NGOs get more funding with much more better conditions than private sectors and young entrepreneurs like me. And I think the private sectors could help young entrepreneurs in all stages of their entrepreneurship, from pre-seed to like even Series A, B. They could be a little bit more favorable to their conditions, and like there's a notion called Death Valley in entrepreneurship. It's right where when the idea becomes reality, there's a if they can't get funding, they just die. So to help them get through that phase, I think the private sector could help. Like, for example, the funding that I recently got from a private firm in Mongolia, I had to lose a very major equity in my company, and I'm no longer the majority owner of my company. So, because I was very early stage, and they had the more power, I lost most of my equity in the company. But the good thing is we still have the same goal, um, same objective as to what we want to do in the company. So I think I hope that the private sector could help the young entrepreneurs in all stages of their entrepreneurship.
Thank you so much, Belguidi.
If I can react to that, so again, when I listen to you, I need to be really humble because what you do is really amazing. Like on every part of what you are doing, and what you pointed out is a real issue indeed, because as banking institutions, so I work for BNP Paribas, which is a whole European banks with global footprints, but with a kind of mindset of the economy of the past. So we as a bank, we finance projects based on past data, which is a model which is not adapted to startups. I have to agree on that. So what we are thinking about is how to model the risk that you represent, because for us we have shareholders, we have people to whom we need to like to give like to express the results of our work. And so we need to assess the risk that we are taking. And for companies like you, for us, it's really difficult. So first, we need to change the way we model our risk based on the new business models that are arising, based also on the fact that what you are creating is not only a value, economic value in terms of real money, but also economic value in terms of mitigating the climate risk. That for us is becoming a real financial risk. So that's a second point. So how do we do that? Is really to, I will repeat myself, but really to be associated with actors such as you or such as public sector institutions in order to kind of mitigate the risk that you can represent and give you the tools to be able to deploy your ambition and your mandate. So I totally agree with you on the fact that we need to transform the way we think about financing and like enterprises that represent a real asset for the future, in the sense that you are really supporting the development of your economy. So that is our role, and we are working on that. So this is what development finance on our side is really becoming a DNA of our action, because it's for us the only way to be really impactful in mitigating this new risk that has been creating the last couple of years, and which would be really, really hard in the future.
Thank you, Kristan.
The foundation doesn't work so much in development finance, but more with innovators like you. We went a little bit more later stage recently, but the problem that you mentioned is basically the same also for later stage innovation, is that the venture capital model, and my understanding is what you got was a kind of venture finance, doesn't fit for some of the innovators and innovations we want to see going forward. I think you're a very good example for some of the innovations that has difficulties outside to get financing. Another asset class that we see that is especially important for climate innovations is like the hardware-based financing, where you need to build big plans that basically use capital of more than $50 million, but the venture is just 2 years old. And I think for both cases, for your case, early stage, very risky, but also for the climate finance case, you have the problem that the return-seeking venture model that is basically looking for outliers to create 60% return plus on a single investment, that it just doesn't work, because many of these innovators, their business model is not set up to create that kind of huge returns. And that's why we are currently also working on alternatives together with banks and investors that are actually operating in a system where you are looking for that kind of returns, because that's what the market currently does, to create new financing structure. And I'm afraid that at least for many parts of the world, the public sector will need to play a major role, because there's just a lot of de-risking capital needed that is also not coming from foundations. If you want to fund these early innovators, or if you want to fund hardware-based climate solutions that can just afford a return of 2 or 3%, you will need to find a way how we communitize the risk, and it will not be taken by private sector, unfortunately. And again, that's a role a foundation can take. Partially the de-risking, but for many of these innovations, the foundation stake will still be too small, but then have the orchestration and bringing the public sector, the governments, for them to de-risk something that we as a society think is useful, but where the market is currently not prepared to provide the capital.
Thank you so much. Uh, Actually, if they told me 10 years ago that we will have a panel with a bank, with foundation, with youth, with UN sitting together in COP29 talking about solutions and innovation and funding, I was going to say that they are joking. So I think that by having this kind of panel, and it was very informative even for me, I learned a lot about the banking and foundation work, and I'm sure everyone here was very excited to hear. But we also been inspired by the youth entrepreneurship ideas and experience, but still a lot need to be done. A lot need to be done for the communities, for youth, for entrepreneurship. So before we go, we still have time to. I know that some of the colleagues have some questions to ask you, and it's an amazing opportunity for us for our learning and aspiration. So I would like to see who would like to have question to our amazing panelists here. So
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to the three of you. I'm not a private sector specialist, so I'm still trying to understand some of the concept. But there is something that I think you said, Dr. Brian, about you can communicate differently to investors than the rest of us can do here. So I'd be interested to hear a bit more about that. And maybe to both of you, Crystal and Brian, climate mobility is a relatively new area of work, even for the UN system. So I'm wondering, do you have already projects that look at that? And going back to the question of communication, if you do not have projects that look at this question, how would you pitch them so that they make sense to people in your world? Thank you.
any other question before we give the floor?
Yes, thank you very much for the great conversation. It's amazing to see also our youth delegate. My name is Julia Duc. I work for the International Organization for Migration, and I'm also leading on the youth initiatives that we have in COP29. So thank you, Bill Goody, for raising these points. I know all the conversations that we have with young people, especially throughout the year, and especially in the margins of COP and at COP itself. And many of the youth delegates that we have here do know what it means to be impacted by climate change, to be displaced, to be affected in one way or another. And we actually see very often the solutions and everything that they bring back to their communities, knowing the reality. They have access to innovation. They have access here that maybe we didn't have before. But very briefly, based on all the conversations that I have with young people, and I know when it comes also to the private sector, to the banks and everything, one of the questions is related to what you already mentioned about how can they access finance for startup youth initiative. But secondly, one of the questions, because I know they will want this reply, if there are any youth initiatives from your side that they can connect to, and also to create something more meaningful with everybody that is doing this, is also one of our things. So thank you again to all, and thank you, Bill Goody, for raising the points.
Thank you so much for the question. I think we have 4 minutes, so maybe we can give you the floor.
I'll start with the communication question. I think foundations still have the privilege to combine the societal view. We are now a corporate foundation, which kind of bridges a little bit the gap from the societal part to the corporate part. But I think in many places, foundations can, by design, they need to take a more societal role. So what we can do is, when we see a young entrepreneur, we can give them a stage that a corporation couldn't do, because there would always be the financial self-interest of the corporation be at the front, while foundations can be a little bit more neutral. I think these idea that foundations can open doors, that they can convene, that they can to showcase without kind of justifying why that makes financial sense is something that a foundation can do better than other actors. And that's why many initiatives are actually looking for foundations to be part of the multi-stakeholder coalition, because we can take roles that others can't take that well. How can a foundation like ours support an entrepreneur like you? Well, it's in this specific case, it's a little bit further away from where our biggest networks are. But in general, I think we, on the one side, we have programs that take in entrepreneurs globally, that connect them with other entrepreneurs, and where we do one-on-one mentoring through our programs on the one side on how to access finance, but I think even more important, who they can speak to that are experts in their field for their specific problem. So it's really that the foundation is a network of networks, where we look into who do we have in our responsible leaders network. The foundation currently has a global network of roughly 3,500 people associated directly with the foundation, but then also the broader network of people that we know that are not directly BMW responsible leader. So we look for a challenge that you have and who we would know that can help you basically solve your needs. And this can be a financial need, but it can also be an access need to a buyer. It can be a technology demand. It can be the question, how can I access public grant resources? How can I access development finance resources? The questions of the founders are manifold and very different, depending on where they are and how they're set up. So I think that's, again, what we as a BMW Foundation can do, but also what others foundations can usually do in general. I think the biggest value, again, is the networks that foundations can bring, and then it can be very individual.
Thank you.
Yes, I would like to rebound on your point about the network. I think it's the key because for us, so to come back on your question on the project that we have in pipeline. So I work for an international bank. We have headquarters in Paris, in London, in New York. But the thing with that issue on resilience and mitigation is that it happens most of the time in what we call the global south. So again, we need to be humble. We don't have the ability to be as relevant as you may be on the identification of what are the good ideas, what are the companies which will really bring value in terms of adapting for the population, the communities, the industries as well. Because when you was talking about your company, which objective is really to model like the way the extreme events will affect communities and people like that. It's also a way to structure the investment decision for both individuals and companies. So this is where we can work. And for that, I will come back to my point about the network. So this is why the dialogue with foundations, but also with developers on the ground is really important for us, because it's a way to access that good ideas, to have also a more relevant analysis of what is good, what is not good in the economic sense, which what makes value for us. So this cooperation is really key to identify this project that would be relevant for the population and create value in the future. So to come back on your question on all these investors can get access to financing. Again, the thing is that we look at really big projects. So the key is really the scalability of the solutions. So our objective is really to find partners who will have the ability to gather these initiatives and to make them to make them bigger, in order for us to create the financing solution that will authorize to bring private sector investment. Because they need size in order to invest. So when we will find more initiatives such as yours, through foundations or through other actors such as UN agencies, we'll be able to create the scale to be able to innovate in terms of what we will fund. Once that is done, the idea is really to bring, as I was saying, this private sector money to your ideas with the risk of the risk that we cannot really assess. So the countries, political risk, and all of that is because, for example, based in Paris, the risk of Mongolia for us is really kind of it's far away from me. But you can be closer to institutions such as the World Bank or the UN, who knows your risk and can guarantee that for us and to allow us to be able to provide this funding that you need. So again, this collaboration is really key, and I think that events like COP is really creating the space to be able to talk together, to identify the issues, to identify the relevant solution, and to be able to provide solution would be really impacting for you, but also to create value for the future.
Thank you so much. And actually, it's after 11, but it has been very interesting, very inspiring conversation. And they say it's always impossible until it's done. And I think by having such amazing different partners and young people and coming together in a forum like COP, but I hope also after COP we translate that into programs and projects ambitious for our people affected by climate crisis. I think it will never be impossible. It will be done, and it will be done successfully since we have our soul and passion and hearts and brains working together to support such cause. I would like to thank you all for such an amazing conversation. Really happy to have all of you, and I think thanks also for the attendees who came early in the morning to support this session. And looking forward to continue this conversation. It's just the beginning. Thank you.